All right, I have about 3 minutes past. It looks like we're starting to level off. We have a little bit of a smaller group tonight, and that makes a lot of sense since we have a smaller section that we're dealing with here today. But just wanted to say welcome and thank you for spending your evening with us to talk about the Greenway and this project. And let's begin. All right. As I mentioned, this is our third meeting this week. The section that we're looking at for this overall project is a little bit smaller. We're looking at the section from Druid Hill Park to North Charles, essentially along connecting the park from Wyman Park Drive through Hopkins campus near the Art Museum, and then connecting from Charles to the potential alignments on 33rd Street. So that's where we're at. So welcome. Thank you guys for being here. Wanted to introduce ourselves and our project team. My name is Matthew Hendrickson. I am the project manager for this Northern Segments project. You'll also be hearing from Melissa Miklas, who's part of our consultant team, as well as Trina Galloway, our chief of engagement. I just wanted to, recognize that we're staffed up here. We have a lot of staff from our engagement team, as well as from our consultant teams. You'll recognize us, not just, from our names, but literally our names, because as you can see, it's highlighted our organization. So that's either the Baltimore City Department of Transportation, RK&K, or ACETO. So we're highlighted there. You'll see that front and center. So you know that we're working on this project. And so kind of direct your questions and comments towards us. But before we get started, I'd like to turn it over to our Deputy Director, Mr. Theo Ngongong. Thank you, Theo.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I want to welcome all of you. I want to welcome back the ones that have been with us since Tuesday. I want to welcome back the ones that were with us last night, and I just want to welcome everybody tonight. Again, my name is Theo Ngongong. I'm the Deputy Director of the Baltimore City Department of Transportation, and it's a pleasure to be here. It's an honor for us to host this series of important events leading up to the design of those northern segments of the bikeways. It is one of the top priorities in terms of transportation for Mayor Brandon Scott. So it is extremely important for us to make sure that this project goes to fruition. Just by way of background, how did we get here? From a money standpoint, we did receive about a little bit over 2 years ago, we received about $450,000 from Bikeways grant from the state, and with the intent to get us to move from concept to really 30% design. And we have a lot of technical folks on the call here to explain to you exactly what that means, and that's why we are here tonight. In addition to $450K, we also received $1.5 million in state dollars that would really cover the entire network. And the idea is to make sure that we can spend part of it, at least in this northern segment. So we have the dollars, we have the team assembled here, we have the momentum, we are ready to go. I hope this is informative to everyone. Again, we want to make sure that we not only listen, but as we present to you, we also explain the process. We've had 2 segments already looked at for the past 2 nights. The third segment in the middle tonight is going to be the focus of our presentation. So welcome again. Let's get the show on the road here. I'm going to now turn to Melissa to take us to the next step.
All right. Thanks, Theo. Welcome back, everyone who joined us for the past 2 nights or one of those nights. And if this is your first time, welcome. So as Theo and Matt said, we're going to dive into another section of this northern segment of the Greenway tonight, but we wanted to, set the stage here for this lovely platform of Zoom that we are in once again. So just a couple rules for tonight. While you're in the main room, please stay muted. That's where we are going to be giving our presentations. And then later on, we're going to put everyone into breakout rooms, and you all will have an opportunity to raise your hands. You'll be called on. You can unmute, share your thoughts, have some conversation with your neighbors and friends. It looks like we do have a little bit of a smaller group tonight, so that might be great in our breakout rooms so that we can have a little bit more conversation in there. So I look forward to that. If you are joining us on the phone and you are not on your computer, when you would like to unmute, the way to do that is *6. If you would like to raise your hand, if you're on the phone, you can hit *9. So when you hit that *6, if for some reason you also have your cell phone muted with your mute button, don't forget to unmute yourself there as well so that we can hear your lovely voices. So if you have any questions while we're going through the presentation, please feel free to send a chat that will go to one of us on the project team, or all of us, or whomever you select. We'll try to be answering those questions as we go throughout the night. And if we don't, we're going to post some information on the project website. Tonight's recording, as well as the one from the past 2 nights, will also, in about 72 hours, we'll get those all up on the project website. So that means you all can take a look at them, forward that to your family and friends. And that way, if you're poking around the website and you want a little bit more details, you can kind of dive into the presentations and maybe what folks were saying in the breakout rooms as well. So tonight we have closed captioning turned on, so that should be on the bottom of your screens for those of you who would like that. And again, if you have any questions, use that chat tonight and we'll be sure to get back in touch with you all. All right, so what are we doing tonight? Let's take a look. So we are starting with welcome and introduction. So welcome, welcome again. And then Matt is going to roll into what has been done previously. So, how has this been studied before? What is the evolution of this trail? What have we been up to over the course of the past few months? And then we're going to talk a little bit about what we heard in previous public input sessions. So we had phase 1 of public input. We talked generally about what a Greenway Trail is and what you guys were looking for, what you love about your neighborhoods. And then we're in phase 2 right now, and we've had 3 nights in this phase 2, and we'll come back for 2 more phases in the project schedule. So we'll share what happened in that phase 1. Tarina is going to be talking about that tonight. And then I'll come back and we'll talk a little bit about the section we're in tonight. So we're going to be taking a look at some potential design solutions, where that roadway alignment is, where we're putting this trail, and let you guys dive deep into those details. So after I walk everybody through that, then we will jump into those breakout rooms. You guys will be able to dive into some more details with your facilitators, talk to one another, and then we'll come back out of the breakout rooms and we'll be answering our questions there. So we've got a couple, survey questions, if you will, where we are going to ask you what your preferences are for this design. And so you don't need to answer any of those questions in your breakout rooms. You can hang on to that until you get back out into the big room. But if you don't have access to the website, where we'll be using something called Slido to answer questions in the rooms tonight with us, the big room. And if you don't have access to a story map, which we're going to share in a bit, then there's a ton of different ways to get in touch with the project team. So after we do those breakout rooms and answer those survey questions, Matt will talk about next steps, and then we'll wrap this meeting up. So speaking of those ways to contact us, so it's not just tonight, we are available to you for a while, and there are a few different ways to get in touch with us. So for those of you with your computers on or screens or tablets, you can see the contact information. For those of you on the phone, I am going to read it out loud. So grab your pens and pencils and pads of paper if you are not looking at your computer screen. I'm going to read off to you an email address, a website, a direct link to our input form on the website, and then a phone number. So I'll go ahead and start with an email that will go to Matt so that you can ask any questions or provide any comments. So his email address for this project is dot-community@baltimorecity.gov. So I'll read that to you. It is dot-community@ BaltimoreGreenway.gov. And that website for the project is www.baltimoregreenway.com. I'll read that one for you. That is www.baltimoregreenway.com. If you'd like to go directly to our contact form on the website, that web address is www.baltimoregreenway.com/contact. So I'll read that one. It is www.baltimoregreenway.com/CONTACT. And lastly, if you would like to use your phone to leave a voicemail for the project team, that phone number is 443-384-4095. So just one last time, that one is 443-984-4095. So as we go through the meeting tonight, Mike is going to be copying that information into the chat for you all. And this screen will pop up a couple more times in case you missed that, but let's get rolling here. So your feedback is super critical to us. That's why we're having these 3 meetings this week. That's why we want to give you guys as much contact information as you can possibly get to get in touch with us. This is your Greenway. This is about you. This is about your culture, your neighborhoods, your families, your friends. We really want to make this about the neighborhoods that it passes through. So a couple ways that we're going to do that tonight. We have talked about using a tool called Slido on the website. And later on, we will send you a link to something called a story map. And then again, you have the freedom to contact us in a variety of ways. So let's take a look at this Slido tool. If you've been with us the past couple of nights, you know that I have a tendency to ask some funny questions to warm up. So let's do that. So to get to Slido, Mike will go ahead and copy and paste the Slido web address into the chat, but it's pretty simple there. It's www.slido.com. So that's www.slido.com. So alternatively, if you have a smartphone or a tablet, you can just put that up to your screen, use your photo function, and tap this QR code as it recognizes it, and it should take you right to the website. So tonight, for our Slido, there is a code that Slido may ask you to put in if you've just typed in the URL. And the code tonight, which is also in the chat, is 127267. So just one more time, that is 127267. Again, that's in the chat for you. And right now we're just doing a warm-up question, so you have a little bit of time to answer our official questions later. So let's warm up tonight. And tonight's question is, what are your pet preferences? So tonight we have the options of dog person all the way, cats are for me, pets, no thank you, birds are where it's at, I prefer watching fish swim, and exotics are my game. There's also an option for other if you would like to select that. So fantastic. I see some folks in there. Wow, dogs and cats. I mean, it's neck and neck right now, guys. So I personally have both. I'm a little crazy, but hey, you know, it's great to see a cat and a dog get along every once in a while. They're super great for being in the background when you're doing Zoom meetings. So there's fun there too. All right. So it looks like a lot of folks have gotten in there. You guys are testing it out. If there's anything kind of funky about that, send us a chat and we'll help you guys a little later on. All right, let's keep cruising. So again, just wanted to reiterate that your feedback is critical to us. The Slido is one way that we will get that tonight. Again, visit the website, please. We will post up the recordings from tonight and the previous 2 nights. And we are going to leave this input open until April 8th. So you do have a while to send this website out to your family, to your friends, to your social groups. So please spread the word for us so that we can get as much input as possible. All right. So I'm just going to stall for one more second because we have to show you this information several times. If you missed the contact information, there it is. If you have any questions, again, use the chat. That will go directly to us. And with that, I think we're about ready to roll into Matt's component of this, which is what have we done previously? Matt?
All right. Thank you. What's been done previously? So just wanted to give a little bit of context. We had our first meeting in the summer of last year to talk about what is a Baltimore Greenway Trail, or what is a trail in general. And we have a really incredible opportunity with this project. Currently, the city of Baltimore has 25 miles of trails existing within this urban loop, including the Gwynns Falls, the Jones Falls, and Herring Run. We also have opportunities along the Middle Branch, the Inner Harbor, and just a really incredible asset connecting green space throughout the city. However, we have 10 miles of gaps within that overall system that we're trying to connect. And this project is the northern segments. If you look at the map, it's that orange dashed line that is connecting the northern area of that loop. And this is just over 6 miles. And so we've broken down this 6 miles into 3 separate meetings this week because it is such a large area. The first meeting we had on Tuesday was in the west. The second meeting last night was to the east. And now we're kind of stuck in the middle here with you to look at this section between Charles Street and Druid Hill Park. So it's a little bit of a smaller section, not as residential, but still critical to the overall connectivity of this project. As we look towards closing the gaps within this trail network, we will then connect over 75 diverse neighborhoods of Baltimore, including schools, universities, access to hospitals and healthcare, and really all of the different types of amenities that the great city of Baltimore can offer. It's I think that's why it is such an important project for the city and this administration and for all of us here. And so again, want to say thank you guys for taking the time to be with us and provide input on this really important project. So what exactly is a greenway? I think there's just a different feel and type, but if you have experienced any of our trails, whether on Gwynns Falls, Jones Falls, Herring Run, if you've walked around the Inner Harbor, you kind of get that sense of what it really is and what it isn't, right? This is definitely off-street, kind of a more kind of walking space. It is a shared use space for people walking. In this photo in Atlanta, you see people scooting around, very active space. You also see kind of that connection to water, to green space and trees and landscaping. We know how important that green space is to folks here in the city. And so it really is kind of a gateway for communities, not just for accessing green space, but then there's the opportunity for us to, connect to transit and other modes of transportation, opportunities for other investments and amenities, whether it's benches or playgrounds, or I know that a lot of our parks have ping pong tables. We're kind of activating that with these different amenities. And again, it really is kind of complementing the neighborhood, a true community asset, as well as kind of all the things that we're trying to do as a city, as far as, ADA accessibility, connectivity, access to jobs, and just, a cool way to see the city of Baltimore. There are also kind of the tangible kind of quantitative benefits, and not only through the construction and realizing these projects and what that means for our economy. It also means, increase in spending, attraction, and bringing folks into the city, It also means, a positive impact on our property values. It also has these other benefits, including, parts of the city's goals around sustainability and, reducing our carbon footprint, which means there is certainly like a quantitative factor to that as far as reducing our pollution and our footprint, our carbon footprint. It also means a positive impact on our health, which oftentimes we think of active transportation, folks running around Lake Montebello, for example, getting that work in, feeling good about our bodies, but also, especially in kind of these COVID times, just having the spaces where we can get out, be active for both our body and for our minds. So again, a lot of these kind of quantitative and qualitative benefits overall for the city and for its residents. So we have a kind of a foundation of work here that's been done. The city is part of a larger Baltimore Greenway Trail coalition. There was some work kind of kicked off by the Rails to Trails Conservancy in 2016 and did a similar planning process for this through 2018. We kind of use that as a reference point and kind of a jump off point as we began this process. However, this is a new process led by the city that we're taking through, from scratch with that foundation, and it's from 0% to concept development into 30% design. And we'll talk about that in just a second. But we have received funding from the state through a Bikeways grant to kind of kick off and get us through this design phase. We will be kind of moving into a second phase to get us to 100%. But again, this is a project that is a priority for the city. It's really important for kind of equitable and multimodal transportation, as well as access to green space and recreation. And kind of wanted to talk about what this particular 30% design phase will do and get us through. So if we could go to the next slide. And so I did kind of want to talk about what our overall schedule is, kind of reference that. We have 4 phases of engagement. So there is still a lot of work to be done and a lot of coordination with you, the public. We kind of talked about the multiple points of contact, but this is one of 4 output phases. We're only in the second phase. So we had one overall kind of listening session citywide as far as kind of, understanding the city's priorities and your priorities, and kind of understanding what a Greenway Trail is and what we're hoping to accomplish, and also to hear your goals. Here, we're getting into kind of more of the details, but we're still pretty flexible. We have a bunch of alternatives as far as routing and design for you to evaluate, but we're still very open to you telling us some other recommendations. We've done a lot of analysis to get us to this point, but again, we still want to hear from you. And if there's some creative solutions, great, we'll take a look at them. But this is our second phase. Sorry, I'm still there. I'm working slowly, but we'll get there. We have 3 meetings for the northern segments. We broke that down into 3 meetings, as you all know. The next 2 phases will then come in the summer. As we incorporate your feedback, we'll deliver a 15% design. So to bring back to you in the summer. And then once we get that through that 3rd phase and hear back from you from that 15% design, then we'll bring back the final 30% design for this overall 30% project. So we're going to continue to work on that. You kind of see the outline there. We'll then, next steps after this 30% design, go through another design to get into more detail around the environmental reviews, the engineering, and further study a lot of kind of intersection treatments, signal analysis, and that is where we will be kind of for our next steps. So I think I droned on a little bit longer there. Not quite as I should have practiced the last 2 nights. I don't know what happened there. But what else do we have? All right, I am done. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Raina to talk about a little the recap of our first meeting, and then we'll move forward.
Good evening again, everyone. So, as Nat mentioned, our first meeting was held last year, and we took notes on all the things that came from that meeting. During that meeting, we provided an overview. We reviewed the limits of the northern segments, and gave some examples and got some feedback. We asked the community members that participated about the desired benefits of the trail system. And these are a few of the things that folks commonly said that they were interested in. And for those on the phone, those things included things like improved safety, greater connectivity, complete streets, and the preservation of corridors. When talking about community enhancements that folks would like to see, here are again some of the things that seem to be the most common amongst the different breakout groups. Safety, service and retail, traffic, walkability. These were all things that were enhancements that community wanted to see. There were also quite a few concerns. People wanted to make sure that we were taking safety into consideration. That was like a reoccurring theme, right? Additionally, connectivity, maintenance, parking, design quality, maintenance, I'm sorry, I think I said that one, medians, streets and traffic. We asked participants how they wanted to be informed as this process continued on. Of course, we were dealing with COVID at the time and everything was virtual. Folks also stated that email communication and in-person meetings were desired, which is why now that things seem, knock on wood, to be getting better, it is our goal for our next round of meetings to all be done in person. We can see your pretty faces, handsome faces. Other things we got back were things like canvassing, which is another one of the things that we'll hope to be able to do for the in-person round. Public meeting one included support and concern. We were seeking a balanced solution. We established criteria and talked about the trade-offs. With any project, they're going to be give a little, take a little, and we find out how we can best appease the most people possible, right? So we talked about safety, comfort, transit impacts, community impacts, environmental impacts. So there's been a lot of information shared with us for us to consider as we move forward with this project.
All right.
And now here's Melissa.
All right. I think we might be getting good at doing these shows, guys. I was saying earlier, I think we're going to miss each other tomorrow night when we're not all together with you guys to talk about greenways. So let's jump in and let's take a look at the segment that we'd like to talk about tonight. And so that is, how do we connect from Druid Hill Park to North Charles Street? So we are going to take a look at the segment that you see here with my big red arrows. And we'll be going through a series of images that are called cross sections. You guys are all experts by now. You probably all know what that is, but it's basically like taking a slice of earth or slice of our roadway area and looking at it from left to right. And so in this case, from our left to right tonight, we're all going to pretend that we're on the road looking toward Lake Montebello. So we're looking toward that east world. And what that means, I'm going to rotate this, and you all know my show by now if you've been here the past couple of nights. But what that means is that the north side of our roadway is going to be on the left. It's on the top here. And the right side is going to be the east. I mean, the right side's going to be the south, which is why we rotated this image, because it gets a little confusing. So left side, north side of the roadway, right side, south side of the roadway. That's clear as mud by now, right? Okay, so let's jump into this segment and take a look. In a moment, I am going to bring up a story map, which is what you all can click on as well later to scroll through these options. So if you didn't join us the past two nights, the options from the past two nights are on there as well. And there are a couple questions about the past 2 nights on the story map. So before we go into the breakout rooms, Mike is going to copy and paste that story map link in the chat. But right now, I'm just going to get you guys acquainted with it if you haven't seen it before. So it's pretty easy. It's just like going to a website. So I'm just opening my browser, and you can click on the link, or you can copy and paste that from the chat. And tonight, we are talking about the Wyman Park Drive section. So if you click on the link, you're going to see the welcome screen here. And you can see at the top, I can click through these quick buttons right here, and it'll take me to the section that we're addressing. So I am going to click on Wyman Park Drive because that's our area for tonight, and show you how this thing works. So this is kind of neat. You can actually click and drag and move your map around, and you can also zoom in and out. So you'll have a plus and minus on your screen as well. So you can get as close in as you want to, read all the little names of the roadways, or you can zoom way out and see all the sections of your greenway. So as we scroll down with our mouse button, if you have a scroller, or as you track down, you'll see different components pop up. So I'll show you how that works for the Wyman Park Drive section. So when you go into your breakout rooms and your facilitators are sharing their screen, they'll be scrolling down just like this, or you can do this at your own pace. So we will start tonight with the section of Wyman Park Drive that goes through Wyman Park. So that is taking us from about Sisson to Remington. So as you scroll down, these cross sections are going to pop up on the side of your screen, and you simply click one time, and then it opens up the image for you. So we're looking at this roadway that goes through the park here. And one of the potential design solutions for this roadway is going to be taking that, it's kind of a little bit narrow of an asphalt greenway that cuts through there right now, and widening that. So the way that we would do this in this first option is going to be widening it away from the roadway. So the roadway remains the same, and that path gets a little bit wider. So that's our option 1. As I scroll down, you will see that there is a second option for this section of roadway. And so what that looks like is we take that shared use path and we will widen it toward the roadway. So in order to have a little bit of a buffer between our Greenway Trail and the roadway, we will just narrow the roadway a little bit. So we still have a travel lane in either direction. It just gets a bit skinnier. That's option 2. So as I scroll down, and you can later, you will get to option 3. Option 3 is a little bit different. So option 3, again, is going to be widening that greenway toward the roadway. But in this case, we're going to take the roadway to one lane in one direction. Which direction? I don't know yet, because we have to study it and we have to figure out which way it would make sense. But the cool thing about that is that gives us some space to add some more significant vegetation and a buffer between the trail and the roadway. So you'll have that wide greenway trail. You'll have a buffer that hopefully we can put trees in because it'll be nice and wide. And then we'll have cars moving in one direction. Like I said, I'm not sure which one. We still have to study that, but just kind of an idea to get that wide path and some more trees. All right. So as you scroll down later, or as your facilitator scrolls down in your discussions, you will see this survey. We're not going to answer it right now. I'm going to continue on to the next design solution, but you guys can do that at your own pace. Or when we get into the bigger room, you can answer that in the Slido with us when we come back. So feel free to discuss first and then come back and answer the questions. All right, so the second segment that we're looking at is Wyman Park Drive, which kind of pops through the Hopkins Gateway right there. So if you guys have been through there lately, it's actually kind of lovely. It's relatively new. There are new brick sidewalks there. There are bioretention facilities on either side of the roadway, which means that stormwater is going into those facilities right there instead of it going into a closed pipe system underground. So this is relatively new. And this is probably the most different section of our potential Greenway Trail because this was just completed. And so I think at this point, when we have people walking, they will walk on the sidewalks. And if we have people who are on bicycles, they'll be in a shared lane environment. This is the only section of our northern segment of trail that isn't just all trail. And it's just because it's new, it was just done. And we thought, for this little piece, we could keep it that way because we have great places for walking and great places for biking. So no questions there. That one stays the same. All right. So then as we turn the corner and we head down Wyman Park Drive, we're kind of within Hopkins campus now. So it definitely has a historic feel to it. There are already existing brick sidewalks there, but we're thinking since this is a greenway project, this is a trail project, this isn't a bike lane project. We want to make sure that we have that trail experience. We want people to be able to walk and bike in that space. So here we're looking at a couple different options. The first one is potentially taking the brick sidewalk that is on the north side of the roadway and expanding that to be greenway width. So right now it's just sidewalk width, but we could take that, keep it brick, keep that character within the campus and expand that out so that people can bike and walk in that space. Our second option for this section, and we've cut through one piece, and I know the road transitions and changes a little bit. Sometimes there's parking on one side, sometimes there's not. But in this particular slice, what we are showing is instead of expanding the sidewalk on the north side, we will have an additional greenway space on the north side. In order to fit that, what we've done is we've taken some of that parking space on the north side of the street. We are raising that up to sidewalk level, so above street level at that curb height, and making our greenway trail there. So in some cases, what that means is we actually can keep some of the parking because it just shifts the roadway over a bit, because the lane on the south side is quite wide. So in some cases, it'll just be kind of reorganizing and shifting over. And when it pinches, we may lose some of that parking. So in this slice here, we're showing that we've just shifted the parking over a bit. So that is our second option. And then as we cruise on through here, again, you'll see some survey questions. So you're welcome to do this at your own pace, or tonight, if you're hanging out with us, please wait for the Slido because we'd really like to see what you guys prefer there. All right, let's keep on cruising toward 33rd Street. And we get to this section in front of the museum. So we are now on Art Museum Drive. So as you all know, we have the museum on one side and we have a park on the other side of this roadway. So our first option here is to actually utilize the existing sidewalk. So it varies a little bit, and there's some planting areas there. There's some steps in front of the museum, but the first option is to really utilize that space and use that sidewalk as our trail. As we keep on cruising into alternate 2, the idea here would be to use some of that parking space that's in front of the museum. Again, we pop that up to sidewalk level, so we're completely separated from vehicles moving past. We'll use some of that parking space, and then we will add our greenway there. So that's a pop-up. The first one was existing sidewalk. The second one is also on the north side, but using that parking space. All right. So after you look at those, again, you'll see these 2 questions, but if you'll hang with us, after you go into the breakout rooms, come back into the big room, and then we will do the Slido again. So just to reiterate, for folks who've been here the past couple of days, I think that you all know that we're really dedicated to making sure that this is all Greenway Trail. So just again, this is not a bikeways project. This is really about making sure that we have that Greenway Trail experience. We want to get through understanding these cross sections so that we can work with you all to understand benches, lighting, all of the amenities that makes this the urban Baltimore City Greenway. So we're looking forward to hanging out with you guys and talking about that too. But tonight, let's stay focused on where we put it. Where do we put it? On what side of the road? Where's the space come from? So you guys are about to go into your breakout rooms. Mike is going to put the story map link into the chat. And then you guys are going to head in there. And when you guys are ready to talk, please raise your hands and then our facilitators will call on you. So if everyone could,
Melissa,
maybe not, go ahead.
One quick note before we move into the breakout rooms.
Yep.
I did just kind of want to acknowledge a couple of things as far as different types of alignments, because a lot of the previous evenings we talked about kind of north and south sides of the streets, kind of expansions of either the median or not, et cetera. So I just wanted to kind of acknowledge a couple big projects that kind of informed our decision making with some of these alignments, which includes the Hopkins new student center right there at the entrance to campus at 33rd. We're not looking at that intersection, but I did want to acknowledge that's going to take a lot of kind of technical details to work through. It's a very complicated intersection, similarly to what we were talking about last night with Hill and Road, where there's a lot of different factors going on. So we're going to be taking a much closer look at that intersection going forward and coordinating Hopkins around their needs for that student center. And then just also the kind of alignment there in previous conversations with Hopkins as a big stakeholder. We were looking at some of the space on that southern side, but it really just kind of didn't make sense. So that was just kind of an overall kind of consensus as far as a seamless connection through that corridor, including kind of another big construction project on that western end as you kind of head towards the curve at Wyman Park Drive. So I just wanted to acknowledge that there have been these previous conversations and also recognizing the significance of those projects for Hopkins and for the surrounding community.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I did see a question in the chat come through to me about the width of the Greenway. And so we're planning on 10 to 12 feet. So we want to make sure that it does feel like a true Greenway trail, that it is not feeling like a sidewalk. So thank you for that.
And then one other thing we did make some tweaks to some of this section where we had the labels of those cross sections a little bit differently, especially on that eastern section where it was called, I believe we had a previously labeled lane road closure for the kind of Wyman Park Drive section. We kind of tweaked that and adjusted that. We kind of still had that same cross section with the lane reduction. Really was just some language there. So again, if folks, what I'm seeing some things come through as far as a closure, right? And that was some previous language that we had. Go ahead and propose that in those conversations. Talk about what you want. Again, we're still kind of working through these dynamics. If there's something that you don't see here, bring it up in that conversation and let us, and then we can take a closer look at it. So just wanted to, again, address that and just be transparent about that change.
Sure. Yeah. And then I just responding to some comments here, had a comment about how do I make this decision if I don't know what the roadway looks like today, if I haven't been there. And so when we come back out after you all have some discussions, I do have some graphics that show what the before looks like. And I will go through these existing and let you know what that looks like before we pop through and look at the options. And so you'll be able to see those before you make any decisions in any survey materials. And if we're not giving you enough time tonight to look at that, again, you can answer these questions on the website later, or you can send an email or leave a voicemail via that phone number. So plenty of opportunity to kind of sit back and digest this and understand what's going on before you make a decision. It's not just tonight. All right. So as we prep to go into those breakout rooms, let's raise our hands. The facilitators will call on you and you can unmute and speak. Let's try not to talk for like 5 minutes. We want to make sure all of our neighbors get a chance to talk tonight. So, 30 seconds or a little bit more if you just need to close up your comment. But let's try to make sure we've got some great discussion in those breakout rooms and you guys get a chance to chat with each other as a community. All right, team. Anything else? Did I forget anything else before we go into breakouts? All right. Okay. Well, Mike, take it away. Let's head into those rooms.
Hi, everybody. This is Oscar Garcia with Arcan-K, the Prime Consultant. I'm here with Tiffany Walker from the Baltimore City Department of Transportation. As people join the breakout room, I will do a quick recap of the different options. And as I do that, I want to remind everybody to just, as you ask your questions or make your concern, just to keep it brief so everybody has a chance to express their opinion. Also, as I go through the different alternatives, and in order to kind of facilitate your questions, think about the things that you like, think about the things that you don't like as much, and think about any general concerns that you may have about the alignment. I'm going to move this here so I can see everybody. And okay, here we go. So for the Wyman Park Drive alternative, so we had one option that was expanding the greenway towards the road. Then there was another option that was expanding the first one was expanding it away from the road. The alternative 2 was expanding it towards the road, making the travel lanes narrower. And then alternative 3 was taking out one of the travel lanes and expanding the greenway towards the road, providing a wider buffer. So that's for that section. For the other section toward the campus, that's the option of using the existing sidewalks. The second option was to expand the sidewalk and take expand the sidewalk, and then the other one is expanding the greenway, taking some of the parking lanes. And then finally, for the Museum Drive, there's the option of utilizing the existing sidewalk, and then the option of replacing the parking lanes to accommodate for the greenway. So having said that, I'm gonna go down the list and ask people to unmute themselves as I call you. So the first—
Matt was first. Matt was first asking.
I'm sorry?
Matt was first. He had his hand up first.
Okay, so yeah, Matt, over there, if you want to unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. This is a route that I travel very regularly on my bike. And, you know, I can say on Wyman Park Drive between Druid Hill and the Hopkins campus, the lanes there are very wide. And, you know, it's a bike throughway, but it feels unsafe because of the speed of the cars. And the intersection just on the other side of that with Sisson Street feels very unsafe with regards to the transition to the trail area that already exists there with the switchbacks. And I'd also like to say that I think, you know, there's a real opportunity here to make it feel like a greenway by removing parking and travel lanes and replacing that with green space. So, you know, like somebody else pointed out, this isn't a largely residential space. So I think relative to the other two areas, removing parking and travel lanes here to encourage more green space and alternative transportation are the best options. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Pete, if you can please unmute yourself.
Thanks for the opportunity. For the Wyman Park Drive section there, you know, I'm a little bit disappointed that there wasn't an option to just remove the car traffic entirely. I'm pretty involved with our neighborhood association. We've been pushing hard to try to make that road through a park more park-like, and this seems like a perfect opportunity to get that done. You know, you could still leave extra room for parking at the ball fields at the kind of southwestern end. And right now, the row of houses on the northeastern end doesn't have parking in front of their houses. You could actually accommodate some parking for them if we were able to close that down entirely to cars. So I was a little disappointed to not see a full closure option for that section of the roadway. If I had to choose with what's there, then clearly making it one way and putting the trail on that with the median with plantings is the best. But I think it's a real missed opportunity to not look at full closure of here. Thanks.
And Pete, I think that, feel free to voice your opinion and your preference, via the different alternatives that were provided. Either send an email or leave a voicemail to Matt, so that your preference of having no traffic along this section is noted. Next, Lauren Chiswick, please, if you can unmute yourself. Sorry if I misspelled you.
Hello. No, you're fine. Hi, Lauren Chiswick. And I was wondering if on the screen, if you could go back to showing the intersection with Wyman Park and Sisson, because it looks like it's sort of incomplete. Yeah, right there. Because so right now the trail ends at Sisson that becomes Keswick. I live right there at that intersection, and let me tell you, there's no crosswalks. There are no sidewalks west of the intersection with Sisson / Keswick. That it changes names right there. There aren't any sidewalks currently at right now. Sorry, my baby is engaging too. But so there currently aren't even sidewalks there, and it looks like the trail doesn't even in this rendering. In this map, it doesn't even show it going to the bridge over East Drive. And so I think that's it would really be helpful to have a better understanding of what's going to happen there, because as it is, that entrance into Druid Park Drive is really unsafe for, pedestrians, people with strollers. If you have a wheelchair, God help you get into the park that way. So I would really appreciate some attention paid to that, because that really is a huge gap currently, just in safety generally for DOT. Thanks.
Lauren,
Thank you.
if I may, what I think they're proposing here is a one-way, because I'm very familiar with that too. It's right now it's a two-way, but this one shows it one way for traffic, and then the other side is the trail.
But
because right now it's two-way.
Okay, so there would not be any. So there wouldn't be an addition of sidewalks or anything to help make it safer. It would just be closing down a lane.
Well, I would say that, right, I mean, we will make a note of that comment. I would say that the access to the Greenway will be considered. Make sure that there's a safe and access to the Greenway, and that the connectivity that is one of the goals of the project is achieved.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, I will make that comment. Then we have sorry, Tiffany, did you want to add something else to that?
No, that was it.
Okay. All right. Then we have Drew. If you can please unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with all the comments that have made so far, and particularly, sorry, I believe it was Lauren. So if you're coming out of the park right now, out of Druid Hill, and you get to that intersection, there's the path that comes down on the south side over 83, and then you can either go down the switchbacks onto the Jones Falls, or you kind of get dumped into the road, and then the existing path through the park there, Wyman Park, is on the north side of the road. So, and that's a big, wide intersection any way you look at it. So I think that needs to be taken into consideration. Like the diagram here, it looks like you go over to Sisson, maybe you go across the street there, and then you're on the north side. And I'd like to see that looked at, to see if that crossing that intersection can be a little more straightforward, literally. But yeah, that's all I have. I will say I support Pete's idea to close it completely to traffic. Thank you.
Thank you, Drew. And the same thing, I think probably, those concerns, I mean, I will voice them when we go back to the main room, but I think by all means, feel free to reach out to the city with the email and the phone that has been provided throughout the meeting. Have Yannick, if you want to please unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi, thank you. So I have a feeling that lane closures, while the folks on this call seem to be so far supportive of it, as a whole, a lot of people seem to freak out at the idea of taking away traffic lanes. And I would really, really love to see the city pilot these programs to really prove that some lane closures could work, whether it's closing Wyman entirely or at least one way. That way, folks who live around the area and travel that area frequently can see how little of an impact it is. And if it's a huge major impact, yeah, obviously we'll we can change or course correct. But please pilot this sort of thing. Put temporary measures. I would hate to see this get bogged down with studies and red tape when we can just put a couple temporary barriers and just use it. Get practical data. Thank you.
Thank you, Yannick. I think that's a very good idea, and I think especially when as a mean to determine which direction could be taken if the option is to take one travel lane. Tiffany, do you want to add something to that?
No, I think it's a great idea as well.
Okay. Well, we have plenty of time left. I don't know if anybody else has any concerns, any questions, if you guys want me to go over the different alternatives.
Matt and Peter, your hands back up, or let's see two.
Oh, I see them. Yeah, I think.
Oh, sorry. I never put mine down, but I'd like the third closure of the Wyman Park Drive, and I'll put my hand down now.
Okay.
Thank you. And Drew and Pete, anything else?
Yeah, I was going to ask, are we going to spend time looking specifically at the other sections, or are we just talking about Wyman Park Drive right now?
So tonight's goal is to just discuss this section, Wyman Park, the section across the campus, and the section across the Museum Drive. The other sections, like Melissa mentioned earlier, those were covered in the previous meetings that took place Tuesday and Wednesday.
Right. Yeah, I was just referring to the other parts of tonight's meeting, just because the cross sections are so different.
Right.
Yeah, just generally, I just wanted to comment. Any of these alignments that are going to be narrowing road space. I ride daily on Art Museum Drive, taking my kids to school, and cars fly on that street, and it's like next to a park in front of an art museum. That sidewalk gets pretty crowded with people going to and from the museum, especially if they've got events and stuff going. So anything that we can do to narrow that roadway and reallocate that space for the trail rather than trying to cram everyone onto a sidewalk would be my preference. And same for the street leading up to that as well. Anything that we can do to get it into the existing roadway rather than messing with the sidewalks would be my preference.
Okay, thank you. I see Nolan Editor, if you want to unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi. So I actually live in Mount Washington, so I don't actually live in the areas necessarily quote unquote affected, but I regularly ride my bike on the Johns Falls Trail when I'm going to Penn Station and what have you. Basically commuting is on the various trails, and so I guess I just generally wanted to support, and I would get excited by, in general, the completion of the trails. And I just wanted to say that I agree with what everyone is saying in regards to reducing travel lanes, and I think that makes a lot of sense. And I also agree with the other comment of testing it before. I mean, there's a lot of other cities have done that, where you on Sundays or whatever, or even just temporarily, you close to traffic and kind of get used to that sort of thing. But anyway, just wanted to show my support. That's basically it.
All right. Thank you. Sure.
Thank you very much.
Okay, anybody else? We still have 10 minutes.
So one thing that hasn't been discussed is that segment that's dashed there on I think it's Charles Street. There are some bike lanes there. Is that what is intended to be used, or is there a trail section there that's intended?
Tiffany, do you know, I think Matt mentioned it, that I think that's kind of like still under study, given that it's a complex intersection. Is that...
That was my understanding, that it was still under study.
Yeah, because I think, excuse me, there have been recent improvements, and I think that's still kind of like, excuse me, understudy to see how it can be incorporated into the greenway. So it's not. I guess my responsibility, like, there's not a proposed alternative yet. I think that is still being developed. So that's why it's not being shown or being presented. Yeah.
Okay, so if I could, then I'll comment on my experience there. I regularly ride on Charles Street past the Hopkins Homewood campus, and there are bike lanes on either side of that street as it's been newly developed, and I won't use them. There is, on the east side, there is an entire parking lane across a large green median. And there's a travel lane for the parked cars there. And I just use that because traffic there is so much calmer, it's so much wider and more safe. And on the main road, they put parking outside of the bike lane. So on either side, I am challenged by drivers and cars. And I absolutely do not like that. So why it was designed to put the bike lanes in the higher traffic area rather than just down the parking strip, I have no idea. And I would recommend that that be ultimately changed. And that doesn't require a curb reconfigurement or anything, just some paint and some adjustments to how the parking is done.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, I think similarly, just if you want to voice that concern to the city DOT via the email or the phone that was provided, that would be, I think, helpful as the design evolves for this section.
Yeah. So just to stay with regards to the greenway, then I think it would be best if it be in the parking lane or the parking strip rather than oriented like the bike lanes or anything like that.
Okay.
So what you're saying, Matt, is that you feel safer if they had designated, like, the designated bike lanes are closer to the parking lanes and not with the regular flow of traffic, right?
Yeah, so there's a whole nother strip of asphalt that's divided by like a greenway median that's on the east side, and that feels very safe to travel in. And that's what I choose to use as opposed to the bike lanes when I'm on a bike, because the bike lanes don't feel safe. And I think if we're talking about a greenway, it would make sense to use that space instead of something that's more akin to the bike lanes.
But now what you're using now, is that an actual parking lane or?
Yeah, so it's a completely separate roadway from Charles Street itself that's in parallel, and it's separated by a green median that's maybe 6 feet wide.
Okay.
And the parking is for in front of the residences and the residence buildings there. But it's just wide enough to get parked cars and have a travel lane for them to move in and out of. But it's a throughway, so there's no through traffic there. The only, is a biker, the only competition I have for the road space is cars that would be in or out just to park.
Okay.
I think that feels much more comfortable, and that's what I choose to use all the way up to University Avenue.
Okay. I'm making a note of it, but also, as Oscar shared, send Matt an email.
Yeah, I'll include all these comments electronically as well.
Right.
Thank you.
Great. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Okay, we have 5 more minutes.
Anybody else?
If I could just echo the previous caller's comments, the temporary closure they've done on the westbound lane for that student center redevelopment has made that road exactly what it should have been from the get-go when Hopkins did that work a few years ago. I would love to see a permanent closure on that westbound lane, so you don't have the southbound traffic on Charles Street anymore. That whole strip has gotten just infinitely better to ride on.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't know. My hand was raised as well, but I want to agree with the two of you guys as well. I find it very odd that you have a lane a traffic lane that its only purpose is to simply serve cars parking, a travel lane for parking cars, whereas you could put the parking on the main part of the road and just use the entirety of that area right in front of the residences for a bike path. And I agree it would be much safer. Anyway, yeah, so that's, agree with you both. But the temporary lane closure is great as well. I regularly ride on that, and it's much nicer having fewer cars to fight with, for sure. Anyway, that's it.
But if you did that, how would it impede the traffic for drivers?
I mean, it's closed now, and I haven't seen a whole lot of change there. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to just echo that. I think that, what is great about this part of the city is that there are so many streets with so many options for drivers that I think that, Wyman Park Drive is probably a relatively less trafficked road, and therefore it's not going to really impact drivers, people who drive in cars that much to take a different route because they have so many different choices.
I see Octavia, if you want to unmute yourself.
I'm totally disagree about them changing the routes with one lane for traffic. I've seen in Baltimore City, and I ride all over the city, that Cold Spring and Green Spring, that one lane, you can't make a right turn. Nobody's near with the bikes. Only people are benefiting is the people who own the car dealership across the street. They place their cars in the bike lane. If I'm going down North Avenue and you have that one lane and I cannot make a turn, it slows up traffic. A 10-minute ride is now 45 minutes. How many bikers do we actually have in Baltimore City to give all the space? That's what I need to know. You're talking about moving cars, talk about moving parking spaces, and people have a difficult time parking in Baltimore City, whether downtown or in neighborhoods. The parking is not great. So you have to design the parking so that people have a place to park. You don't want to take away parking from people who live in the area, which is not fair. I have nothing against the bikers. I ride a bike too sometimes, and I walk. But we have to come to some solution makes it safe for everybody in Baltimore City to walk, to ride their bike, but not be able to take up all this parking space.
Thank you, Clavia. And I see Caroline Chapman, if you want to unmute yourself.
Oh, yes. I would definitely like to piggyback what Octavia just said. First of all, I'm sorry, I'm still at work, required to wear a mask. But I do walk from Hamden over to Charles to catch the bus down here to Hopkins. And first does everybody know that the SNF Agora is under construction? So the Wyman Park Drive is like really bad right now. It just happened like a day or two ago. I can't imagine anything happening there right now with the construction going on. And I don't think it's finishing until 2024. But the other thing, what Octavia said, I really feel strongly that the parking lanes in front of the Baltimore Museum of Art should not be taken. I mean, we don't have enough people going to museums, and then you take precious parking right outside the museum. I feel very strongly that that should remain.
Thank you, Caroline. We have to go back now to the main room. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Hello, everybody. You can probably hear me. Welcome. Glad you're here. I was going to give it a few seconds just to see if we have any more participants. It looks like we're at 17, probably going to stick there. Yeah, so first I'll introduce myself. I'm Colin Hodges. I'm a senior planner at the RK&K working on this project with the City of Baltimore. And Eric, go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm Eric James, liaison for DOT Northwest area.
Thanks, Eric. And what I'm going to do, I know Mike in the main room just provided everybody with this link, but I'm going to put the link in the story map again. So you can bring that up if you'd like on your own screen. And as Melissa mentioned, how we're going to handle the discussion is anybody who has a question, comment, anything at all, just raise your hand in the Zoom function, and I will call on you, and you can unmute yourself and speak for a bit, and then we can address anything that might come up. So I'm also going to share my screen just so we have the story map up so we can refer to anything that we might need to during the conversation, any details of the alignment or cross sections. Okay, so first, I guess, does anybody have anything? Any questions, any concerns? If you do, just raise your hand, or also in the chat, feel free to type something if you don't want to speak, but would rather type in the chat. Okay, see John, go ahead.
Hi, thanks. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, cool. I just had a question about one of the options for the art museum, or no, sorry, this would be the Wyman Park Drive through the JHU campus alternative options. So one of the options has the sidewalks only being extended, and I know that the ADA accessibility is like a big part of the Greenway expansion, and I was just wondering how the brick sidewalks are considered in terms of their like accessibility to people using mobility devices, because I currently live in Bolton Hill and they can get a bit hairy when it's icy, and definitely like if vegetation roots grows through them, they can get a bit wobbly, and then people are forced to use the actual like streets for that reason.
Okay, no, that's a good question. So you're kind of concerned about the material and how in certain conditions, especially, it could get dicey for those who are using mobility aids, or even bikes potentially, or people who can't get around as well. Does that sound like about it?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So but also what I wanted to note, I didn't know this before, is when we get back into the main room, we're going to have a bit of a recap from each group. So I'll mention some of the main points that were discussed, and one of them I'll certainly bring up is the question about the brick sidewalks, and also just generally the materials being used for the trail, what we're considering there, and if we're to make sure that we are fully considering the impact that different materials would have on people with different mobility needs. So thank you, John. That was a good comment. And to answer your question, I believe you started with a question, sort of, and I'm not sure personally. We'll have to run that by the group, but also we'll generally discuss the materials that are being used. And I'm not aware of any specific limitations to brick when it comes to ADA compliance, but although different materials, of course, have different properties and different conditions. So, Eric, I don't know, has that come up at all on your end?
Not on my end so far.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll bring that back to the group and make sure it's considered. And it looks like Odette Ramos, Councilwoman. Go ahead. Thank you for joining.
Thanks very much for your time and for doing this. I was also listening in last night. I have two questions, if that's all right. One is, I was hoping to see something about the intersection of Wyman Park Drive and Sisson-Keswick, because that intersection is a total and complete mess. And we have to do something about it if the safety from Druid Hill Park to this part is going to be there. I'm a runner, so just like yesterday, I go to I live in Charles Village and I go to Lake Montebello, but I also go to Druid Hill Park, and that intersection is pretty treacherous. So I do want to see something about that particular intersection, because the way it's configured now is totally not safe. There's no crosswalks. The slip lane has to be closed. So I want to make sure that this is being considered in this plan.
Great. Thank you for the comment. So it looks like you're talking about this intersection, and actually I am a runner also, and I have went through this intersection, and I completely agree. It's a little tricky, as you said. Doesn't have great accommodations currently. So in terms of the question about how it's going to be addressed, I'm not sure exactly what stage or what the design concept might be for that intersection yet, but I know that intersections throughout the corridor are going to be strongly considered and carefully formulated so that they work well for all the users anticipated on the trail. We won't just begin and end a trail on either side of an intersection and leave an intersection untouched and not conducive to the modes that need to use it. So
this is considered in the 30% design of the so that intersection is included in that.
I'm almost certain that is. So I'll bring that up in the main room and just make sure. But yes, intersections will be considered. I'm 99% sure about that.
Great, thanks. And then the other question I had was going back to the part that's on Wyman Park Drive through the JHU campus. That looked like the diagram was that we're adding to the existing sidewalk. Why are we doing that when there's the road is wide enough that we can probably narrow the actual car lanes and put the trail, raise the trail like we were going to do on 33rd?
I see. Oh, so that is one of the options. You're talking about this stretch here, right, along the campus?
Yeah, not by the daycare center, but over, as you're going to Art Museum Drive.
Yes. Okay. So this stretch here, right. So you're probably referring to this very large or very wide lane in traffic here, which is about 19.5 feet. This is one you're talking about.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. So that is one of the alternatives. And, when we're looking at the 30% level, it's just kind of making sure that we consider all the options that could be implemented or that could be feasible to make the connection work. Not necessarily preferring one over the other at this point. So that is one option, to keep the lane as is in case that was desired. But there is another option to, I think as you mentioned, to bring the greenway into the road, but kind of elevate it, not into the road, but have it road adjacent and elevate it so that it's separate and reduce the size of that lane. So that is one of the options that we have available here. And it's sounding like you would have a strong preference for that over retaining the roadway as is.
I was just curious about that. I think the roadway is pretty big. So, but I'm, looking forward to hearing the rest of the, views of everyone. I also know that that's actually Hopkins property. And so that's another factor in whether or not those conversations have actually happened. So, and when you said they were, but we want to I need to be part of those conversations.
Okay. And I'll bring that back to the project team to involve you or reach out to you in those conversations. And Eric, would you mind communicating that with BCDOT or BCDOT in case they don't already have that on the agenda?
Okay.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I'll leave it for everybody else. I want to give time for everybody else too.
Sure. Thank you.
And Colin, real quick before you go to the next person, John also agreed that the slip lane is not needed. I guess that's in reference to Keswick Sisson area.
Okay.
And Tanya Phil Hicks says existing brick walkways are not maintained currently. So that's something else to note.
Okay. So materials and also the need to maintain them in terms of what is installed in the end. Got it. Sorry, I've written stuff down.
Yeah.
So I make sure to bring it up later. Okay, thanks, Eric.
And one more, Ms. Hughes states that this meeting certainly would not have feedback from the majority of residents in this area. How many community associations have you met with concerning this project. I know we reached out to over 65 communities along the stretch of the of this project, to community associations and those who email addresses we did have.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Eric. I know there's been a lot of outreach leading up to this, so thanks for addressing that. And also, I see really quickly before I get to the next hands that are raised, Lori, I think, mentioned, I'm not seeing center lines in the figures on the trails. Will lines be added? I think they're an effective reminder for all users that the trail is bi-directional. I'm not sure about that. I have not seen any lines in any of the concepts so far, but that's something that I'll raise with the main group. So thanks, Lori. And in the meantime, I think it looks like Sandy is up next. Go ahead, Sandy.
Thanks. I guess I'm inclined to use the existing sidewalk areas or expanding on them. I kind of feel like cars feel like they have the right of way. And if we were to take parking and their travel away, they might not kind of take too kind to that. But the other comment I wanted to make is, I guess maybe because I'm a little bit of a control freak, is there going to be some consistencies from the other areas through, so that people kind of know what kind of pathway they're going to be expecting. If we change from taking away a road or expanding it, that's kind of what I was thinking. There's just the consistency on all these paths connecting and flowing with one another. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. So I think it sounds like you're, for the latter, the second part of what you were saying, you want to make sure that there is continuity, or the transitions are sensible and people can navigate them kind of efficiently, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So note the transitions are important, and transitions from one section to another are definitely a component of what goes into the design, making sure, just like intersections, the considerations with intersections, making sure that crossing an intersection is intuitive and safe, and that also transitions between different sections are sensible. And if you don't mind, the first part of what you were mentioning, could you clarify which section you were talking about, just so I can bring it up and write down a coherent note?
Actually, yeah, I think for all of them in this particular section, I'm inclined to stay with the existing sidewalks.
Okay, so using these existing sidewalk space.
Yeah.
Even if we were to widen the space to make a path.
Yeah.
Okay. And can I ask, is there a reason you mentioned in order to separate users better, or what did you mention in that regard?
Well, I think I was commenting about drivers where they don't really want their parking spaces taken away, or taking their lanes away, or making like through Wyman Park, making it a one-way. I wouldn't have a problem with Wyman Park being one way, but others might.
Okay, so it's those are preferred, that using these existing sidewalks and widening them potentially, or widening them as part of the Greenway would be preferred to avoid conflicts, both physically with vehicles potentially, but also in terms of the space on the roadway that they use.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. And up next, Jed Weeks, go ahead.
Hey, thanks. I just wanted to speak specifically around the closure of Wyman Park Drive. I know that was an option that was in the slide deck yesterday, and it's not now. And that's really unfortunate, because in the first round of meetings around this project, every single homeowner on that street requested the street to be closed. So to see it removed seems like a deliberate oversight, or a deliberate move against the interests of all of the homeowners on that corridor. So that's also something that I know the community association, which I'm the land chair of, has unanimously backed and voted on to keep that road closed. So seeing it not reflected tonight is very disappointing. And then when we move into the Hopkins segment, I also know that the community has had meetings with Hopkins and with the sort of first version of this project team, where they said we could not use the sidewalks for the trail and it needed to be in the street. So again, seeing that presented as an option when it's already been vetoed by the property owner seems like a bit of an oversight. And we would just need to keep the facility as a sidewalk extension into the street, which I think is also a better facility. And then in front of the art museum, I think it would be, I support widening the facility out into the street, but I think parking there is also important. And I think it would make sense to, instead of taking the parking lane, take the center turn lane. There's at least 12 feet of buffer there in the middle of the road. And I don't know why we wouldn't utilize that space for a travel lane, utilize the existing travel lane for parking, and, extend the trail out. Sorry, my son is screaming.
It's okay.
Extend the trail out, into the road, and that way everyone wins. And then, as it wraps the corner, I would just encourage the team to be, studying how the existing construction closure is affecting traffic, because it doesn't seem to be, and it might be a good time to just reclaim all of that space for the trail.
Which space? I'm sorry. Which space?
Sorry, just the red dotted line you have here, which is already closed to vehicular.
Charles, I see.
During the closure for the for the Matin Center, I think it is the Student Center redevelopment.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Then the only other thing I'd echo is the crossings are all very dangerous, and especially the one, at Keswick needs to be immediately addressed, even prior to project implementation, with a quick build or something.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jed. Appreciate that. And just to recap a little bit, sounds like the Charles Street, there's already a lane closure that's in effect, that doesn't appear in your view or what you've witnessed to be affecting traffic, and that could be maybe discussed with JHU. Art Museum taking potentially the center turn lane to use space to bring the greenway, separated greenway out into the roadway could be an option. There had been previous discussions where JHU may not have been as amenable to the greenway being actually on a sidewalk. So we should make sure that we have everything straight with that, and that you prefer. It sounds like the alternative to sidewalk greenway, or the greenway extending into the roadway and elevating to separate. And then that there was an alternative before through Wyman Park, where the entire roadway would have been closed, and that's no longer presented. So that's something you would want to see brought up again. So thank you very much for all of that. I have taken some notes. And Eric, is there anything regarding the past involvement efforts or the outreach to JHU, or the alternative where the entire Wyman Park Drive was shut through the park that you're aware of that would help?
I do remember meetings in the past in reference to Wyman Park, the area that Jed is talking about being closed off. I think it was presented in the meeting last night, but wasn't tonight. Am I correct, Jed?
The whole slide deck was available last night, and it was in the slide deck. It wasn't presented, but it was in there, and it was removed overnight. So.
Oh, was that removed? I thought that was the entire road closed in that slide, or was it that there was a lane closure?
There had been a full closure slide at one point that was in the deck. So.
Okay. Yeah, I'll
look into it.
Sorry, what was that?
I said we probably have to look into it to see what happened.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks again, Jed. Thanks, Eric, for some clarification there. And next up would be John.
I just wanted to make one quick comment I was here in yesterday's meeting on 33rd Street, and I just wanted to wait until the end to give everybody a choice to talk about the Wyman Park Drive. And if I had seen that there was an option where it was a complete street closure, I agree that I would choose that one for out of all the options. But my question is, from yesterday, I was when we were talking about the 33rd Street, there was the Meridian option where the Greenway would go down the Meridian. And I was looking at the other options for the streets, and I was interested in seeing that the Gwynns Falls Parkway didn't have that as an option. And I was just disappointed to see that. That's all I just wanted to say.
Okay, and that's disappointed that the median Greenway was not an alternative for the Gwynns Falls.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. And yeah, I think as may have been brought up in previous meetings, there had been other outreach efforts in the past where the median running Greenway was not favorably received for a variety of reasons, and that's why it was, or part of the reason that it was dropped from these alternatives. But I'll bring that feedback back to the group for sure. So thank you.
Yeah, from our meetings yesterday, it seemed like the Meridian one, or the median option, got the majority of the votes on the 33rd Street option. So yeah.
It did. Yes, you're right. It seemed to be the one that rose to the top for sure. Thanks again, John. And it looks like George Helfrich, you have your hand raised as well.
Yes. Was any thought given to, instead of going in front of the art museum, going around Wyman Park Dell? Because there's like a huge lane there where there's already a bike path. And then the road from 29th to Charles Street there going down to the Art Museum Drive is barely used at all. To give you a lot of space and still leave all the parking and everything in front of the museum.
Okay, and so you're just to make sure I understand, it looks like you're saying that instead of going in front of the art museum, was it ever considered to go south along south adjacent to Wyman Park Dell and then curve around 29th Street and then go north on Charles from there?
Right, because there's a bike lane on Maryland that comes into they've set it up nice and wide there. So yeah, so going around that circle there and coming down again.
No, it's an excellent point. I'll bring that up, and I'm personally not sure if that was discussed or not, or if that was something that was ruled out for one reason or another. But I'll bring that up and make sure that the team's aware of that. So thank you, George. We have Mary next.
Good evening. I wanted to respond to someone who asked a question about they were disappointed that there would not be, in Gwynns Falls Parkway, there would not be a path down the middle of it. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, I think we would like to keep the discussion tonight, if possible, to the Wyman Park Drive.
I understand, but let me just respond. The reason why is because it is historically preserved. We fought hard not to have that done, to have our trees die, and it just wouldn't be appropriate. So I just wanted to answer that question.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Mary, for adding a bit to that and some context there. So next would be Eleni.
Hi, I'm putting in my vote, echoing Councilwoman Ramos to say that the Keswick and Drive access on that slip lane needs to be closed. Very dangerous intersection needs to be considered here. The Wyman Park Drive option, I like alternative 3 the best, but I also saw that slide in the slide deck last night with Wyman Park Drive closed entirely. And that is my strong preference as well. The Wyman Park Drive option through the JHU campus, alternative 2 is my preference. There's a lot of room on that road for, taking away parking space. It's already a de facto bike lane as it is. I'm always able to bike entirely on that portion of the road, so make use of it as it is. And then Art Museum Drive, I like alternative 2, but again, I don't know why the turn lane can't be used instead. So we can preserve parking. I can see the museum really having an issue with that, so it seems possible there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And right on time, we have a few seconds, about 10 seconds left. So thank you everybody for attending and the discussion. I'll bring up a recap in the main room. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to the number or the emails provided. So thank you again.
Hello and good evening, everybody. Some folks are popping on and Always great to see faces. So I see some familiar faces from some previous nights. I also see some new names and faces. So either way, thanks for joining us, either for night 3 or for the very first time talking about the northern section here. So this is the breakout room to really dive into what we just saw with the alignments for Wyman Park Drive through Hopkins campus. So what we're going to do tonight in the format, if you are joining us for the first time in a meeting, is we use this time to really bring up any questions, concerns, alignments that you like, any additional suggestions that maybe aren't shown at this time. It's your opportunity as a community to bring those up. And how you do that is you'll raise your hand. So down right now at the bottom of my screen, and it's likely at the bottom of yours, is the toolbar. And there's a button for reactions. And if you click that, there's a button to raise your hand. So if you raise your hand, I'll go down through the order that I see them pop up, and I'll call on folks, and you can unmute yourself, let us know your question, comment, concern. We'll do our best. Shana and I will do our best to address those, and then we'll report back to the group when all is said and done there. So I guess to introduce myself, my name is Brad Deese, and I'm a senior landscape designer with RK&K. And I'm going to share my screen here. And while I do that, Shana, if you just want to say hello.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Shana Rose, and I'm a planner with the Department of Transportation. And I will be monitoring the chat. So you can send me a question, or you can communicate with everyone in the chat there.
Awesome. All right. And we have about 20 minutes. So I just asked that everyone try to keep it brief, and we'll keep it brief in our answers. And then if we have time at the end, if there's anything we need to circle back on, or if additional questions or comments pop up, happy to do that. So I'm just going to go down in the order, and then once we get through a few, I'll also take a pause to see if there's anybody that may be calling in via phone and doesn't have the ability to raise their hand. So first up on the screen, I see Chris. So Chris, if you want to go ahead and let us know your thoughts.
Hi, Chris Broughton. I bike this particular area of the proposed Greenway Trail a ton. My first thing I would say is the area through Wyman Park Drive. Actually, I just biked last Friday. As a majority cyclist, I cycle more than I drive. I do think that keeping that two-way and narrowing the roadway each direction would help slow cars down and make it safer for everybody going through there. The idea of one way is cool, but if it's not going to narrow it and keep people from going 40 miles an hour through there, then it doesn't serve a purpose. I'd rather have two-way traffic going 25 miles an hour through there than one way going like 35, 40, which is frequent right now. Also, I had a question about the Art Museum Drive area because I ride that a lot. My question was if you had considered or looked into putting the trail on the Wyman Park Dell side of the road, and that's a twofold issue. Well, actually three. One, I feel like if it's a greenway, it should be up against more parks. The Dell is a really nice area. Two, when you're coming off of Maryland Avenue cycle track, if you're cycling, you're generally riding up on that side, like if you want to go off the Stony Run or something like that, or over to Charles Street. So as a cyclist coming from Maryland Avenue, it makes more sense to keep on that side. The third reason is I could foresee a lot of conflict with museum goers or people going to Gertrude's on the museum side if you put the Greenway Trail on that side. So I wasn't sure like why you guys eliminated the south side and didn't give us that option.
Sure. So thanks, Chris, for your questions and comments there. They're great. So I think on the Wyman Park section, there's certainly a lot of benefits to doing the one way. In addition to what we call a road diet, narrowing those lanes, that would hopefully add safer conditions for folks along the Greenway. People tend to feel more comfortable when there's lower speeds, and those tighter lanes typically lead to lower speeds. And the other benefit that we have with that one is that we are able to plant that buffer in between, because that gives us enough space to do that. And then for your comments and questions along Art Museum Drive, there are a couple considerations as to why we show them on the museum side, but we are not locked into that by any means. This is still very early on in the process. And I do, I hear your points on connecting with the existing bikeways and trying to avoid conflicts with folks in the museum. I mean, luckily it's a really busy, popular spot. So we will definitely be looking at that as an option. There's some things that might restrict us on that southern side. There's the slope. There's some retaining wall that holds that slope between Wyman. So we'll certainly be taking a look at that as we move forward. So just to keep things brief and keep moving on, I'm going to go to David. He has his hand up next.
Hi, thanks for taking feedback tonight. My name's David. I live in Remington, very close to the section of the proposed trail between Keswick and Remington Avenue. And that whole section of the park is the park that I use like every day with my family. I bike and walk and run there with myself and my 2-year-old. And it's also the main way that we get to Druid Hill Park. And I've been trying to work with our council person in the city to at least get a crosswalk that connects the sort of terminus of the existing trail to Druid Hill Park, because right now there's no facilities at all. And, folks are forced to either walk in the middle of the road, or there's a billy goat trail that's developed by the Stife Silver building. And it's dangerous, and it's kind of demoralizing for folks to have to traipse through a lawn or navigate traffic to get to the biggest park in the city, especially when they're about to open the new pool this summer. So even as we're looking at this longer term stuff, which is very exciting, I hope that the city can do something in the short term to make it safer for folks to get to Druid Hill, because right now it's, I'm not the only parent with a stroller who's taking their life in their hands to go to the park every day. And I'm not sure why it's taken so long to get to this point, because we have a survey with over 1,000 people who have signed, going all the way back to last year. The other point I wanted to make is I'm really disappointed that the option to close down that section of Wyman Park Drive to traffic was removed from the public survey. I took the survey earlier and selected that option as my preferred alternative, because it would create a brand new, wonderful park space for the whole community where there's no concerns about speeding cars. And I know it's the preferred option for the Greater Remington Improvement Association and a number of other groups in the area. And the fact that it was taken out of the options just before this meeting tonight makes me distrustful of this whole process. I feel like it should be up for public review, and I don't know what happens where it's suddenly gone. Even if we do narrow the road, I think people who speed like to use this road because the curves are fun to drive fast down. And I've seen cars flipped over in this street that I go through every day. And I don't know why we would lose this opportunity to make a, beautiful contiguous park space. And I would just like to talk more about why it's no longer an option. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, David. So it's certainly still an option. Just to piggyback off your latest comment, it's still an option. Really, it was in the terminology. So the section that we had shown previously really showed a temporary barrier, and we, based on feedback that we received the last 2 nights, what we did was we enhanced this the lane closure to include the buffer and the widened greenway. And then also narrowing this lane. So we don't have a typical graphic that shows that it is that the entire roadway could be shut down. It would certainly involve some additional traffic studies, but I think you're right. I think we want to know if folks want that as an option to completely close off the vehicular access and what that would look like. In the longer term, longer range planning, we'd have to see and make sure that access is still available. I understand people use this as a shortcut and they like to speed down it, and those are certainly safety concerns that we'd like to try to avoid because we want folks feeling safe along the greenway. Safe for strollers, safe for bicyclists, and safe for joggers and pedestrians. So it's not off the table. It was really just a change to and trying to incorporate some feedback from the previous night. So we'll bring that back to the bigger group session. And whether we develop a graphic or include that just as a bullet point in the survey, I think would be great because that's the exact kind of feedback we want to get. And as for the connection to Druid Hill, that's very important. A big piece of this whole greenway is connecting folks to the points of interest, the everyday services that they use, but then also those big attractions in the park, because folks think greenway, they think the parks, and it's a no-brainer connection to get folks there. So those intersections are going to take a little bit of figuring out. There's some traffic engineering that's involved. There's some traffic study that needs to happen. But we do want to make sure that people use the greenway, are able to use that greenway continuously. And we don't create these choke points or these dangerous situations where you get from one segment to another. So that likely, those intersections themselves likely won't be addressed until we really start digging into design. Probably around the 15 to 30% design is when we'll start to see what those intersection treatments may look like. But that's certainly on our radar and something that we're tracking. So I'm going to go next to Jennifer. I see Jennifer with her hand up.
Yes, thank you. And David, I want to thank you for raising the issue about the Sisson Wyman Park Drive intersection. So I'm the representative of Johns Hopkins University, and Steve we have our Whiting School of Engineering folks there, and we hear all the time from them about how unsafe it is. I've been trying to connect with DOT about getting some immediate solutions to address pedestrian crossings and whatnot. So again, David, thank you for raising that. I just would like to get a little bit of clarity about the Wyman Park Drive section, not the skinny piece where we have site constraints, but the one that's adjacent to the campus. What I'm seeing for the first time is that the suggestion is that on the north side, which would be the campus side, that there would be an enhanced trail system there, which actually cuts into our property, Johns Hopkins property. So I just want to make sure I understand that is what the recommendation is, because that is something that I think, even though we've been discussing, on and off with Department of Transportation, it's just, I got to be honest, it's sort of shocking to see a public presentation that includes a trail that is on our property without having the benefit of talking with us to say that this is an option. So I just want to make sure I understand if that is what in fact is being proposed as an option, that it is like a portion on our property. I could be completely wrong. I just want to understand that a little bit better, please.
Sure. No, I think you raise a good point. So what we're looking at on the screen, there are two options that we are proposing. So, and you're correct. In the one on the north side, we're proposing that there could be an extension of that sidewalk. And a couple of reasons we propose this, and as well as this other treatment, but one of the reasons we propose this is to keep in the character of the campus. So instead of laying additional impervious and cutting new paths through, it would keep in character with the brick. We'd be able to use, the existing infrastructure that's kind of been laid, the path system that's been laid there. It also would connect nicely to the existing shared use path that is down in this section that currently only exists on this. It's kind of the northwest side. So to keep up with continuity and not have to cross any roads, that would be an option heading into the campus. But certainly, this is one of the options we're looking at. The other one being Greenway replaces that parking lane. The parking lane would shift over, so not taking and going any further into campus. Still on that side, It gets tricky when you try to cross people across the road. But if we are looking into, possibly shutting down the roadway section below, that does, provide a little more freedom to have people cross safely and to switch sides of campus if need be. So I think they're options that are on the table. Certainly not trying to steer anybody one way or the other, but we want to think through, what our options are and hear the feedback of, what people would prefer, and we'd have to pursue, based upon that. If
Thank you. And hey, Jennifer, this is Matt, and I just wanted to just chime in. I'm hearing a preference. So we do have a lot of room within the roadway. And we want to continue this conversation with you with the utmost respect. And you know that. I think
I understand that, but again, Matt,
yes.
like we have been talking with you and working with you, and to be in a meeting right now and be presented with something that you're going to present it to a vote and not have the courtesy to give like us a heads up that that's being presented. That's disingenuous to like anybody, any stakeholder. So I just want to go on record and say that I'm sorry. I'm just flabbergasted to be in a meeting and to see this. That's just my stake.
Okay. Understood. I hear you loud and clear, Jennifer.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer. And Martha's been patiently waiting with her hand up, so I'm going to get to her next.
Thank you. My name is Martha. I am the president of the Friends of Wyman Park Dell. We're a community group, all volunteer group of neighbors who plan programming and help preserve Wyman Park Dell, which is along Art Museum Drive, Charles Street, Howard Street, and 29th. And I just want to echo, Chris said this, but I just want to reinstate the question and some of the considerations that you mentioned, Brad, about putting the Greenway on the south side of Art Museum Drive along the Dell. And just, I know that you mentioned the slope and the historic retaining wall near the intersection. And I do just want to make you aware that there is a master plan of the Dell that was created several years ago. So when those considerations are made and some of those details are looked at more closely, it would be lovely for you to get in contact with us so that you can see what the Wyman Park Dell master plan looks like and make sure that that is being respected. And that's a plan that was put together with BCRP. And I would hope that they would know that, but I just want to say it again. So yeah, that's all.
Awesome. Thank you, Martha. And yeah, I have to say, I personally was not aware, but it doesn't mean that other folks on our team weren't. So I'd love to just make sure that I connect with you and make sure we have that connection and can see the, master plan. And, we'd love to align with it. I think there are some things that may make it tricky, but I think on either side of the corridor, there are certain considerations we have to keep into account. Coming to mind, just the biggest thing is trying to maintain that 8 to 12. May be tricky in some areas, but maybe the trade-off is that even if we have to narrow down near the retaining wall, it's still possibly a better condition for folks just to keep people away from the front of the art museum, people going to Gertrude's and not touching the parking over there. I think personally it would be nice to kind of ride by the Dell there on that side. It's vegetated, it's a greenway, and hopefully that spurs the more access people have to the Greenway, and the closer they are to the Dell, hopefully the more ownership they start to take of it. They want to make sure that invasives are taken out and that things are looking good. So that might generate volunteers and, at least more, more visibility there. So I think that's a great point. And I'll send you a chat too.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, you got it. All right. And then I see Chris has his hand up. I'm just going to pause real quick. Is anybody dialed in on a phone that isn't able to raise their hand, but that has had a burning question? You can go ahead. I'll give you a couple of seconds to unmute yourself and jump in here.
Good evening. My name is Jacqueline, and I've had my hand up. I didn't know if you saw it. I was calling in. I have a lot of concerns. Some have been expressed, mainly that there has been no notification to the city residents about this process, no formal type of notification or approval. So I wanted to know about the whole funding and approval process. And also, it kind of looks like it's on the back end that we are receiving some type of input, which I'm not so certain that it's actually input as much as kind of placation. I'm wondering what this is going to do to the traffic. I'm really concerned about the traffic because it seems that you all have taken historically, main roads instead of trying to get through some of the residential areas that historically have had less traffic. You all are interrupting and impeding the busiest main streets in the city. And it's kind of looking like the city is turning into a one-horse town. While I can appreciate the health benefits, I don't think that it's a good idea to try to make people get out and be healthy. I think that it's a nice thing to have a place that's inviting, but to basically cause chaos throughout the city, which is spilling over into 695 and the surrounding, highways and roads. The traffic and congestion is ridiculous. And I think it's because of this project, which has been started years in advance of anybody's notification. So I want to know what avenues are there if anybody really strongly, vehemently opposes this process.
Sure, and thank you for raising those concerns. I'll address what I can, and then I'll ask Shana if she has anything to add to it. She can hop in here and add, and I'll certainly report back in our big group summary. So traffic is a big part, and parking are two contentious issues that we typically deal with, and a lot of those it's vary section by section. We'll have to take a look at what the traffic impacts could be to some of these improvements that we're presenting. And then we'll also have to take a look at parking, making sure that people have access to parking, because it's been raised in other sessions that I was in, and I think it's very valid. We want to make sure that folks that don't have access to parking on their lots don't have to, walk at night or carry groceries far away. We don't want to take anyone's parking access away. And while we do want to promote an active, lifestyle, we're certainly not prescribing that for anybody. So we want to make sure that the services that people use, whether it be public transit, whether it's private vehicular transportation, that those aren't, severely interrupted, and that folks can still get in their car and get where they need to go and know they will have a spot to come back to. So those are certainly in consideration when we look at all this, and they will require.
I don't want to cut you off, but it looks like the traffic's already been obstructed just by the last several years. All of these plans that you have into effect, most of them have already been, the streets have already been torn up. And there is already demolition in place and has been for several years around Druid Hill Park, around Herring Run Park, around Lake Montebello. These things around Hanlon Park, it's like the project has been well underway for years under the guise of improving the reservoir systems, I think is what most of the residents think. So it's it's very, we're very blindsided to see that those roads are not going to be restored to the full traffic capability, the full amount of traffic that they are used to accommodating. And then I hear also a lot of concern about protecting the people who visit Johns Hopkins and the museum, but I don't hear anything about protecting the residents and their property when you to take away their parking, take away their privacy, and have a lot of public traveling through these neighborhoods instead of neighborhoods that historically don't have that traffic. And I think it looks like it's too late to start all over with new plans because you already have the ground has already been dug and these things are almost completed. So I want to know what type of avenues do we have if people just basically if you take a vote of city residents and we don't approve.
Yep, and I don't mean to cut you off either, but we are running out of time, and I want to make sure that I address that. So I think those are definitely concerns that we are aware of and that we are trying to plan through. And I just want to let you know and everybody know that this is very on in this process of the northern portion. So everything that we're talking about are years from implementation. And that's why we have these public meetings to gather input and look at some of these cross sections to see what people prefer, and try to incorporate those into our plans. There's a lot of coordination pieces that need to happen between public institutions and private ones as well. So we have about 30 seconds left. Chris, I know you have your hand up. If you can slip in a question or comment in 15 seconds, go for it.
Sure. Well, I'll change what I was going to say, but we have over 2,000 miles of roadways in this city. Yet less than half of our population actually has a car. Under half of our residents in this.
You can press, thank you. You can press *9 to raise your hand or *6 to unmute yourself if you're on the phone. As you just heard, this session is being recorded. If you don't want to be recorded, but you have a comment or question, please feel free to use the chat. So this evening, I think I do have a participant with their hand raised already. Peggy, if you would like to unmute.
Yes.
Please feel free. Yes, ma'am. How are you this evening?
Fine, thank you. I was on the call Tuesday and yesterday, and I have a couple of really quick questions. First one is, what do you anticipate the total time to completion to be?
So we are still in the early phases of design, and I will ask that question when we get back into the main room. Unless, Tarena, are you aware of what the total timeline is for the project?
No, not at this time. We're still very early on. We're nowhere near construction or even a final design.
Okay.
There's going to be many more touch points before we get to that point.
The second thing, it's been emphasized that this is not a bike trail, that it's a trail for multimodal transportation. But it seems as though automobiles are low priority. And I also want to know who is paying the cost for installation as well as maintenance of these trails.
So I do believe that Theo, Mr. Ngangong, did go over costs and where the funds came from earlier this evening, but we can definitely get that answer for you, Miss Peggy.
Well,
I don't have it on hand.
I'm sorry, he mentioned $1.5 million from the state, as well as $450,000 from bikeways. But when you start talking about installation and maintenance, it's going to be a whole lot more than that. I just want to make sure that as a resident, a homeowner, and a taxpayer, that I'm not going to wind up paying for this.
Yes, ma'am. We noted your comment, and we will definitely get that information for you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
And thank you for hanging out with us each night, Miss Peggy. I've seen you all 3 nights.
Miss Linda, I see your hand raised.
Good seeing you, Nakia. Thank you.
Nice seeing you also. Well, I can't see you, but nice hearing from you.
Absolutely. So I asked a question to Melissa on Monday, and it dovetails right in with Peggy Rice's question about funding. I really want to have access to the grant request as well as any and all stipulations that accompany the state funding. Grant requests usually come with delineations of timelines and deliverables. So I think that there's a lot more discrete detail that is associated with this that perhaps can be shared or that is otherwise available. And I, as a taxpayer and resident, along with numerous others, would probably like to benefit from seeing the actual grant write-up and the state funding stipulations accompanying the disbursement of funds.
Yes, ma'am. I'm taking note of that, and I'll make sure that that gets back to Matt and the team at DOT.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I do want to also just add to that that I believe he was speaking to the study, and that's like just the design, not the actual construction piece of it, Miss Linda. The bikeways money that was available was to help us with the design, creating the design, not for the construction piece. But we'll get more clarity for you for sure.
Thank you so much, Ms. Galloway.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Tarina. Dylan, I see your hand raised.
Hi, yeah. Thank you for sharing this. I just wanted to make a comment that I think with the design choices, I'd really like to prioritize, particularly for this section, increasing sort of that green space. And I know for like on Gwynn Falls and 33rd, it's more of a throughway. So I understand kind of the need for wanting to keep cars and parking and things like that. But for this area where it's just much more green and sort of low traffic, I think prioritizing widening those lanes and maybe minimizing the car traffic, this is sort of a good place to do that, especially if we're not able to do that in those other areas. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm gonna check the chat and see if we have anything in there. Not so far. Anyone else with a comment, question? Mark Washington, nice to hear from you again this evening. I see your hand. Mr. Washington, if you're talking, you're muted.
Hi, Nakia, can you hear me now?
I thought his hand just was saying hi.
Yes, yes, we can hear you now.
So it's good to see you again. We didn't get an answer to this question last night. Just as there were alternative routes proposed for the portion of the Gwynns Falls Parkway corridor, Olmsted Brothers Boulevard, why weren't there or why aren't there alternative routes being proposed for our portion of the Olmsted Brothers Boulevard on 33rd Street coming through Chum? That doesn't seem like we have enough to go on to even discuss a compromise. It's like it's coming down 33rd, that's it. There are no alternate routes being offered for you all to review at Chum. Why is that?
So I do know that even if there are no alternatives suggested, Matt did state that if you have some ideas for alternatives, please let us know what they are. So that's part of the conversation or discussion.
Well, yeah, we did that with DOT. I believe at a meeting that Matt attended over the summer with us. But it doesn't seem as if it were actually taken seriously, heard, or acted upon. So what we will do is once again, look to DOT because, they are the professionals to come to us with proposed alternative routes that circumvent a small portion of the Olmsted Brother 33rd Street median in Chum.
Mr. Washington, Tarina here. I want to tell you that I did see your email the email thread from last night into this morning. So we will get back to you as it relates to that. Your question again was restated in that email. We're going to include it in a greater discussion for the notes for this meeting, but I will make sure that there is a response provided for you to that question.
I appreciate that because we've been asking that question for months now.
I'm aware. Again, I'm coming into this process, I guess more so full throttle now. So I will be making sure that the communication piece happens. I don't have the answer. I'm not on that side of the fence, but I will get you an answer.
All right, thank you. I'm not going to belabor the point. I think the point has been made. We do want to see alternative routes suggested. We've pointed them out.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, no, hey, Mark, this is Matt, and I hear you. And yeah, we'll get something on the calendar to talk through. And yeah, I think we did hear that last night. And when we committed to those follow-ups, and just like we did every night, and then just want to continue to this conversation for this particular segment And I know that
okay, that's
passion is for
fine.
that 33rd segment, and you know that we'll continue to follow up.
Yeah, that's fine, Matt. I expect to
sir.
hear something soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Tarina. Thank you, Matt. Dylan, I still see you have a hand up. I don't know if that's an old hand or a new hand.
Sorry, I think I forgot to lower it down.
Totally fine. Totally fine. Baltimore taxpayer. That at least that's how your name comes up on my screen. Feel free to unmute yourself.
Hello, Baltimore taxpayer. We got a lot of Baltimore taxpayers in the audience.
Yeah, I could raise my hand for that one, Mark. Matt.
Hello.
If you're talking to us, you may still be muted.
Did we already hear from the Baltimore taxpayer or no?
No.
All right. If you're on the
okay,
or they're not on the phone.
They're not on the phone. Mm-mm.
Okay. All right. We'll come back.
Okay. Yes. Well, no other hands at this moment, Matt. If we want to go through those
I think
alternatives again.
Question. Yeah. If you or maybe just go through some of the leading questions here, just kind of get some feedback. If we have a shy group. I didn't think this would be a shy group.
I didn't think so either.
We're kind of hearing some priorities from the other segments, and so well noted. And again, we do want to focus in on this area, but definitely recognize that this is a larger corridor.
Yeah, and just thinking about what parts of the alternatives, which alternatives you would prefer. Again, I'm gonna scroll through just so that you can see what's being
proposed. We have some new hands raised. Just want to let you know.
So I still see Baltimore taxpayer, and Mr. Dillon, is that a new hand?
Yeah, I guess I'll just chime in again. I think, just to go with my earlier point, I think obviously there's a lot more sort of tension around those other corridors since there's so much more used. And so again, I think my preference here, I think for this one is minimizing it. So it's just that one lane of traffic. I just think there's a lot more opportunity here to kind of create better spaces for bikers and walkers and people in, mobility chairs and things like that, and creating much more sort of green space in this area without as much impact on drivers, which in general, I think can sometimes be overblown, but I think particularly here is a good way to prioritize sort of those green spaces and other options for travel.
Thank you again. So I did share that alternative with everyone so that you could see it's basically having a very wide trail and one lane of traffic with a buffer in between traffic and the walkers / bikers. So we shared that. Baltimore taxpayer, let's see, Mr. Dick Williams.
Hello. If you can hear me, I just wanted to ask about the alternative going down to one lane in which direction, either north, south. You all have looked at the car count. So I suppose that you would find that if one lane is removed so that you have traffic only going in one direction, that there won't be some sort of huge balloon at one end or the other end of this section as a result of lowering the number of vehicles that can pass through at any one time. Do you get my question?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
You want to make sure that if we decide to go with this alternative where we take the road down to travel in one direction, that we did consider the car counts or traffic volume in the area to make sure we can still handle traffic flow and have that medium. In the path that wide.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. And I've taken that note, and Serena and I will take that back to the team. Again, we are pretty early in design and still moving through which alternative will work best. Miss Linda.
Thank you again. The 10 to 12 foot path width, is that the average Are there ranges for the path width that are lesser than that and greater than that? Because I think folks need to know and understand what the flexibilities are that are associated with this. And quite frankly, I would also encourage in rolling out these presentations that the parties whom are delivering the presentations, whom are supposed to be neutral conveyors of information, relax their perspective and viewpoints on whether they think something is cool or not, so as not to prejudice the audience as we go through this process. I heard several comments like that from presenters at the beginning of this, and I find that a little troubling. And the third point is, I share Mr. Washington's concerns, and I'd like to know in that regard, what cultural studies there have been with respect to those residents who live on historically protected Olmsted pathway parkways to ensure that their interests are maintained and preserved. Have there been any specific cultural studies, just like transportation studies and environmental impact studies? Have there been any cultural studies that address what those stakeholders who live on the streets, not those who pass through on their bikes or cars, but those who are most directly affected by the change, are interested in seeing, want, and feel that should be preserved? So that's it. That's it for me.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms.
Ms. Linda, I just want to hop in and speak. Kelly did also send me a message with that question right before she had to drop off. So I did assure her that we would get an answer to that question and be back in touch.
Thank you.
If that's the one as it relates to the cultural studies, I'm not going to make something up. I'm not absolutely sure. I will get an answer and let you know that information.
I mean, and the reason is there's a presumption that everybody who traverses through communities have as much stake in the welfare of those communities, greater than and sometimes equal to the people who actually pay taxes there. And that is a misnomer that is problematic. And the
I received that, Ms. Linda.
Yes.
I received that. We'll be in touch. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Karina, I'm presenting, but I think I have someone messaging me in chat. Can you see the chat?
No, I just got a direct message from Ms. Bigelow before she dropped off. But no, I don't see the general chat. I'm sorry.
Okay, I pulled it up. Sandy messaged and said that the location of the Greenway along Wyman Park Drive, west of Wyman Park Drive, does not consider the Lower Stony Run strategic plan to bring the Stony Run walking path up from the stream valley below to connect in front of the Boy Scouts to the Jones Falls Trailhead and Druid Hill Park. Thank you for that comment, Sandy, and I will make sure that the design team gets this comment so that they can address that or take a look at that plan and make sure that they're coordinating.
Is that Ms. Sparks?
Yes.
Okay.
I realize I meant to add the Wyman Park Drive Bridge because there is a bollard path on the north side, but after the bridge is where it breaks to go down to the stream, and we have a big plan to have access to the stream from that point and to actually connect to the existing path that's along the ball fields. So I'd like to see that really work together build upon what's there, and the fact that we are very much wanting to connect to Druid Hill Park and Jones Falls Trail below, at the end of Wyman Park Drive.
So, Miss Sandy, we've taken note of that. If it's, I believe you have my email with someone on my team. I just want to make sure if you could get me that information so I can make sure that it's very clear. Okay. There's a lot of pieces to that.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't want to not give you a full response, and I just acknowledge that it's a little more intricate than some of the other questions.
Oh, okay. Very good. I will,
I'll shoot you an email for you to respond to.
Great. I will attach information for you.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And actually, the planning is underway as we speak. We have a big community meeting on Tuesday night where we'll go through the various plans. So this is long in the making, actually, and we're working with DPW because it's really an access issue for cleaning out the stream where the tunnel starts. It gets blocked up with trees. It's a mess. And we want people to enjoy going down along the Stony Run from one end to the other.
Thank you, Miss Sandy. I hate to cut you off. I want to make sure that I got everyone else. We did get the 5-minute warning a minute ago. If anyone else has a comment, Mr. Williams, please unmute yourself.
Thank you. I just wanted to make mention that at the lower part of the screen there that shows the Greenway Trail crossing Keswick and going into the park, there's quite a stand of mature trees right along that area that runs sort of parallel, if you would, to the east of Keswick Road. So I'm very familiar myself with that because I've planted some trees in there that are fairly new, several years at the oldest. But there are, in the most section there, once crossing Keswick, there are some magnificent, beautiful old trees. So the question is, does the Greenway's path sort of meander around the trees? I'd love to hear that the pathway would not involve taking down mature, 30, 40-year-old trees.
Yes, sir. We will ask that question.
Okay, thank you.
I believe we are all going to get pushed back into the main room very shortly. But if anyone else has another comment before we get pushed back into the main group, we all appreciate your comments, your time this evening. We thank you for participating, especially those who hung in with us all 3 nights. We thank you, and I'm pretty sure your community thanks you as well. So again, thank you for participating, and just stand by for a few more seconds and you'll get a notice on your screen that says you're going back to the main room.
All right, welcome back, folks. We'll give it just a little bit for everybody to filter back into our main room. Mike, can you give me a thumbs up? Can you see my screen? Awesome, thank you. Right. Well, hopefully you all had some good discussions while you were in there, had a chance to see your neighbors. I know you all are probably ready to get some dinner and get on with your evening. So we're going to stick to time tonight and get you all, I'd say home normally, but we're all probably, a bunch of us are home already. So we'll get you off your computers and off your phones and onto family life. All right. So I thought we would do a little report out before we go on to our survey questions, and you guys have a chance to use that Slido tool if you'd like to with us tonight. So let's go around the room and just see what everybody had to say. So I am going to start with team room leader, Oscar. Oscar, take it away.
Thank you, Melissa. Okay, so we had a really good discussion. I think in the room we had about 17 people. There was people in favor of anything that basically helped reducing the speed along Wyman Park. Basically, they were in favor of reducing lane widths. They also wanted to see an option where the traffic was completely removed along Wyman Park. There were also people that expressed concern about losing parking space, especially in front of the museum. And also they expressed concern about the accessibility to the Greenway on the west side, near the Season intersection. And one idea that somebody brought up was for the city to pilot the closing of Wyman Park Drive, or even the option of having closure on travel lane going one way or the other. So they wanted to see a pilot program to test these options. I think that's what I have.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
So yeah, definitely a lot of points there about safety and traffic calming, and we'll take a look at that, and interesting thoughts on closing the road through the park there. So this is all great stuff. Thanks, Oscar. All right, let's move on to Colin. What did your room have to say, Colin?
Thanks, Melissa. We had a good discussion in our group, and one of the things people brought up multiple times was the intersection. So transitions generally were brought up in terms of from one section of the Greenway to the other. They should be consistent and intuitive. And then the intersection specifically with Wyman Park Drive and Keswick and Sisson needs to be considered. And even more specifically, a number of people in the group said the slip lane there is not needed and should be removed to make the trail safer. But generally, that the intersection as a whole needs a good makeover. There was some comment about preference for the existing sidewalks, expanding those to avoid conflicts with vehicles or encroaching on vehicle space. And then we also, as in the first group, or Oscar's group, we had multiple people prefer, if possible, the closure of Wyman Park Drive entirely. So that was definitely something that people were discussing and that we had come up. Art Museum Drive, a couple of people mentioned the possibility of why not use or reduce or remove the center turn lane in order to facilitate the trail in that area. So that came up a couple times. Also, Charles Street, apparently there's some construction going on there that is not impacting vehicle traffic to the extent that one of the commenters thought it would, or that is not very impactful. So maybe there's an opportunity to work with JHU or the city to take more space on Charles. And finally, there was an idea floated about going around, or was it considered going around Wyman Park Dell to the south and then connecting around 29th Street and then north on Charles from there. And I wasn't sure if that had been considered or not. And that is mostly what we talked about. Thank you.
Okay, great, Colin, thanks. Yeah, intersections are so critical to this. I mean, that safety component, it's so important to be able to either, cross a roadway safely. And sometimes, that helps pushes us to make a design decision because we want to make sure that you do have that consistent experience, and we do really put safety at the top of the list of our trade-offs. Safety really should never be a trade-off. It should be our beacon of light that we need to follow here. So, all right, guys, let's keep moving around the room. How about Brad? Are you there, Brad? Muted, Brad?
I sure am. You would think I would know by now, but
it's late.
It's okay. Our group chat went a lot better, a lot smoother than that. So, what I'll do is I'll kind of break out comments by section because that kind of seemed how they popped up.
Okay.
So talk about Wyman Park. In general, it seemed like folks really liked the idea of eliminating the lane and extending that buffer. It seems like there's a great need for speed reduction in that area, not only just the volume, but really the speed at which cars are traveling down there. But there was a comment about a couple comments about closing that entirely. So some votes for closing that down entirely. And just to be completely transparent, there was some concern that there was language that there would be road closure and that it was taken out of the survey. And so there's just some transparency questions that were brought up on that. So, and then for the Johns Hopkins section, it was brought up that we really need close coordination with Johns Hopkins. Anything, pertaining to their campus and, what's going to be done, whether it's in roadway or modifying those sidewalks there. And then I think a majority of our discussion kind of landed in the Art Museum Drive. And a couple comments from there. Just there's maybe some coordination that can be done with the Wyman Park Dell group. There's a master plan that's been set in place, so I have some contact information. So just to ensure that we're looking at that master plan and taking that into account, and working with the group there. There's also some avid bikers that said, maybe that would be the southern side of the corridor, closest to the Dell, if that would be considered, for part of the Greenway rather than having it on the northern side. There's some concerns with conflicts of, just a lot of people going in and out of the museum and going to Gertrude's, also being closer to the Dell and aligning with some established bike routes that are already in there. So we were asked, to take a look at that and take that under consideration. And then there were some just general comments. Some folks felt like there's a lot of construction in the area already. It's really impacting traffic and it's impacting parking. So just in general, any treatment that is in the road, there's concern that that's going to add to that congestion. And, they're concerned about loss of parking and traffic issues.
Okay. All right. Great. All good things to consider. Thanks, guys. Good feedback. We'll definitely take a look at some of those roadway modifications that you guys talked about. So good feedback there. All right, let's move on to Nakia's room.
So very good conversation this evening. We did hear some feedback about wanting to increase the green space through Wyman Park, widening that green space and maybe getting rid of that lane of traffic was desired by some. We had some conversation about or around whether we had done vehicular counts or car counts for that change. If that was something that would be done if it hadn't been done. And also a conversation about this, I'm gonna say Lower Stony Run strategic plan. If the team had taken that plan into consideration, and Serena did offer her contact information so that we could get that plan to make sure we are incorporating those changes into our design. And also the fact that there are some very mature trees at that crossing at Keswick that the community would like to keep intact.
Okay. All right. Very good. So definitely some things to consider there as we get into our next stages of design and we survey the corridor so we know where all the trees are and the dimensions of those intersections. We'll get into that as we advance toward 30%, which is where we are aiming in this study. All right. Anything else from the team, Matt, before we go through our survey questions and just take the temperature of tonight? Okay.
No, we are good to go.
All right. Let's roll.
Thank you.
Okay. So if you would like to join me back at Slido, again, this isn't the only opportunity you have to give feedback. You can use that story map if you like, or leave us a voicemail, or use the contact form, or send an email. All those options are available to you. This is what we're taking the temperature on tonight. But if there's something in the answers that you see here that you have an idea that's not presented, by all means, please send that along. We're going to compile all the comments and look at everything that you all say in the next month before we move to the next stage of design. All right, so again, you can go to slido.com, slido.com, and the number that you will need to put in if it asks you is 127267. All right, so you can use that QR code or go there. If you're on the phone and you don't have the availability to access Slido, again, not a problem at all. Just shoot us an email, send us a voicemail. All right, so let's pop through these questions. So I'm just going to do a quick refresher here. So the first section we're looking at is Wyman Park Drive, that bit through the park. And so the existing condition for this is that we have a shared use path that's about 8 feet on the side of the roadway and 2 travel lanes. So your option 1, when the Slido pops up, is going to be to expand and widen that shared use path away from the roadway. Your option 2 is to expand that shared use path toward the roadway, which we will narrow the roadway a bit and then keep the 2 travel lanes. Your option 3 is to expand that greenway, that shared use path toward the roadway, create a buffer, perhaps with vegetation, trees, etc., and then have circulation by vehicles in one direction. We're not sure which direction that would be. So tonight, just taking your temperature on those options, and if there's something that you're thinking of that's not here, not a problem. Again, voicemail, email, contact form, all of those are available to you. So it looks like 3 is taking the lead here at 55% of the votes, followed by widening that greenway away from the roadway, low 20%. Are widening the greenway toward the roadway with the buffers, now about 58%, 59%. And it seems like from the discussion that maybe just, converting that all to path and closing it might be an option for some of you. So please don't forget to go ahead and send us a message if that is your preference. All right, I'm going to keep cruising here. So let's do Wyman Park Drive, that gateway. Again, as a reminder, that is going to remain the same. That's what the cross section looks like today. And then our next section through campus, and we have been coordinating with campus. We definitely need to chat with them some more, but let's hear what you guys have to think about this section. So right now we have a couple travel lanes. One is quite wide. The other one has some parking adjacent to it. And there are brick sidewalks on both sides of the roadway. So our option 1 is to expand that existing brick sidewalk that is on the north side of the roadway to create our Greenway Trail. So that is option 1. And our option 2 is going to replace that parking lane, rise that roadway up to sidewalk level so that we have our trail there, and then shift the roadway over. So in some cases, we'll be able to keep that parking. In some cases, it may be a little bit narrow. So that's our option 2. All right, let's see what you guys think. Again, feel free to send messages to us, contact forms, let us know what we didn't think of there. All right, so it looks like 100%, oh, there we go, 94% Alt 2, which is that sidewalk greenway on the north side, and about 17% of you all are looking at that sidewalk expansion. So again, really good feedback from you guys. We'll definitely be coordinating with Hopkins. They're doing a lot of work over there. We've had a couple meetings with them already and talking about their campus master plan and what's going on. So definitely good to know what you guys are thinking tonight, and great to know what you guys are thinking for about the next month, so that we can incorporate that into our discussions. All right, so about 79% likes that sidewalk greenway on the north side, 80% now, and about 20% likes the sidewalk expansion. All right, let's keep going. Okay, let's look at Art Museum Drive. So our existing condition out there today is there is an existing sidewalk in front of the museum. We do have two-way travel on that roadway. We have parking on both sides of the street, and then that buffer in the middle. So one of our options is to utilize that existing sidewalk space, expand it where we can, and use that as our Greenway Trail, but the roadway remains the same. That is our option one. And then our second option is to take some space from the roadway, perhaps that parking lane adjacent to the museum side, so that's our north side of the street, pull that up to sidewalk level and create a greenway in that space. So that may have some narrowing of those lanes. And then I heard someone say that perhaps that buffer could be narrowed as well. So that's a great option for us to take a look at. All right, so that's option two. So let's take the temperature of tonight. So what do we think about using the existing sidewalk space, potentially expanding on it a little bit, or using some space from the roadway and carving out new space for that trail and bringing that up to sidewalk level? All right, so looks like we are about a little bit over 70 for sidewalk Greenway North, which is the one where we use some of that roadway space. And looks like about 26% looking at the utilization of the existing sidewalk. So creeping up a little bit on the percentages there for you guys on the phone, not looking at my screen, about 78% are looking at using some of that roadway space to create new Greenway Trail, and 21% looking at the existing sidewalk. All right. So that is great input. Thank you all. I think if there are no final thoughts, Matt, from you, I think we're ready to close out this meeting and talk about next steps.
Thanks, Melissa, and thanks, everyone. Really great feedback. Thank you for the great discussion. I was bouncing around and hearing from folks. Really great ideas and great feedback. Thank you all. Again, this is not the kind of only opportunity to have input. The survey and the story map is going to continue to be up on our website. We'll continue to take those comments at least through that first week of April 8th is where we have it at this point. And then we're going to continue to take a look at that feedback and then bring you back 15% design later in the summer. So again, we have multiple touch points here. We've had a great week of 3 consecutive meetings. Thank you everyone for investing the time and the energy and the passion. And again, we are going to take a look at that and incorporate that into these design plans. And again, we'll be in touch. We'll continue to follow up with one. We heard a lot of themes and trends. So frequently asked questions. We'll take your feedback and get you some more information to help inform. As you want to continue to make comments and kind of take a closer look at the plans. As well as, community outreach is ongoing. This is just phase 2 of 4. And we'll be coming through and having these kind of smaller community meetings throughout this phase to ensure that we're hearing from everyone. So if you haven't heard from us yet, drop us a line. If not, we'll be reaching out to you soon. So again, lots of opportunities to have your voice heard through this process. So again, thank you all. And if you have any immediate kind of comments, please, contact us either by email, the website, or the contact form on the webpage. And for folks that, just want to leave us a voicemail, I'll be listening in for that, 443-984-4095. And we'll be following up through all of those kind of different touch points. And again, really grateful for the input and continuing to work with you all. So thank you again.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening. Thank you for joining us.